today's meeting. Michelle, to declare this meeting open. I declaring the meeting open so that we can check in terms of our agenda. Can we flight our agenda so that we just familiarize ourselves with the agenda? Thank you very much. Members, there is the agenda for today's meeting. It's opening and welcome. Apologies. Then we will have a briefing by the Department of Social Development on the fundraising amendment bill. And we will have then deliberations by the members and consideration and adoption of committee minutes, and also consideration of adoption of budget vote reports, DSD, and Stats SA. Then we will follow by any other matters or any other business, and then we'll have closure for today's meeting. But let's first get a proposal for the adoption of the agenda. Can we first adopt the agenda? Any proposal? You are all welcome, members.
I move for the adoption, Chair Nkosi.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Nkosi. Is there any seconder? Seconder for the adoption of the agenda?
Good morning, Chairperson.
Chair.
Sorry.
Michelle?
Again, good morning, Chairperson, members, our colleagues. I was just going to indicate, Chair, that Ms. Ndongeni's hand has been raised. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Honorable Ndongeni.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Good morning, Chair. I second the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you very much. Our agenda is being adopted. I think just before we go into the agenda, as a new chairperson, I think just a quick introduction so that we as members just familiarize ourselves with faces. So just to give a very short introduction of ourselves as members and also of the support staff so that we also familiarize us with faces. To be very short and quick, myself, I'm Edward Njadu. I'm the chairperson of the committee, and then I will give them to the whip. And so we'll go on with all the members, and then after that, we'll then give to the staff also just to familiarize ourselves with our faces so that we know each other better. Honorable Whip. Honorable Nkosi. Honorable Ndongeni. Am I audible? Michelle?
Chairperson, yes, you are audible.
Yes, can we quickly have our members just so that we just familiarize ourselves with each other? Honorable Whip, Honorable Nkosi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. My name is Ethel Nkosi, the whip of the committee. Also the member of the NCOP representing Mpumalanga in the NCOP. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Whip. Honorable Ndongeni.
Thank you, Chair. Morning. My name is Nokuzola Ndongeni from Eastern Cape. I'm this committee as from 2019. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ndongeni. Can we, Honorable Chabaleng? Any other member from any other member on the committee? Yes, you're welcome.
Honorable He from Northwest.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lily.
Thank you.
Honorable Chair, it's Honorable Christians representing. the Northwest.
Greetings, Chairperson, and greetings to everyone.
Yes, thank you, but
My
Honorable
name
Christian.
is Slindi Olive.
Thank you very much, Honorable Slindine.
Chairperson.
Yes, I got you, Honorable Lutuli.
Yes, yes, I am from KZN. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other member?
Chairperson,
Thank you.
Chairperson,
Yes, you may come in.
this is Honorable G.N. Swartboy from KZN, the Chairperson of Social Development.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chairperson,
Yes, Honorable Chabaleng.
yes, I'm Elegant Chabaleng, a member of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My
Yes.
phone is not very happy.
Okay, all right. Okay, any
Good
other
morning,
member?
Chairperson. Good morning, Chairperson. My name is Polly Bushielo from Limpopo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Pauline. Any other member?
Good morning, Honorable Chair.
Yes, Honorable.
I'm Marcel Maritz from Limpopo MPL.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Good
next.
morning, Chairperson. My name is Gavin Edwards. I am the chairperson in the Northwest Provincial Legislature.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Okay. Any other members? Then we can move to the support staff quickly. From the secretary.
Honorable Chair,
Yes.
can I request Marcel to admit Honorable Nsube on the lobby?
No, I believe accepted me.
Okay, thank you very much. Honorable Nsube, welcome. All right, can we start with the secretary of the committee?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marcel Williams, and I'm the committee secretary for the Select Committee on Health and Social Services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Any further support staff?
Good morning, Chairperson. I am Mr. Naidu, logistics and all the other administrative functions within the committee section. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Naidu.
Good morning, Chairperson and everyone. My name is Mkhululi Molo. I'm a researcher for the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mkhululi.
Good morning, Chairperson and members. I'm Tabile Keche, the content advisor for the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Tabile.
Good morning, Chairperson. My name is Yolis Olandu. I provide communication support for the committee from Parliamentary Communication Services.
Thank you very much. Yoliswa, any further? Okay.
Good morning, Chair, honorable members and colleagues. I'm Dennis Bandi, the unit manager for the social services cluster. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bandi, any further?
Morning,
Okay.
Chairperson.
Yes, thank you.
My name is Lerato Masete, the committee coordinator for the PC on Health in the Limpopo Legislature.
Thank you very much. Any further? Okay, if we done, I want to thank everybody.
Morning, Chair. Morning,
Okay.
Chair.
Morning, Chair.
It's Advocate Beja from the Legislature in Eastern Cape. With me, I have legal advisors, Mr. Chabazayo, Ms. Dirman, as well as the senior manager responsible for languages in the Legislature and Hansard, Mr. Manunyana. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Thank you, Palisa.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, honorable members. My name is Palisa Lisabe. I'm the committee coordinator in the Northwest Provincial Legislature. I have colleagues with me from legal and research from the Northwest joining you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chairperson.
Nomfuzo.
And yes, good morning, Chairperson, honorable members, colleagues. My name is Nomfuzo Dano, and Northwest Parliamentary Liaison Officer.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Connie Sefoff, legal advisor from Free State Legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Connie.
Good morning, Chairperson. My name is Greg. I'm an Executive Secretary.
Thank you very much, Greg. Good morning. Okay, I think.
Good morning, Chair.
Okay, come, Tembi.
Yes, good morning, Chair. Good morning, honorable members and other colleagues on the platform. My name is Nomathemba Mokgethi. I'm the chairperson in the Gauteng, chairperson of social development in the Gauteng legislature. Chair, I'm struggling with my gadget. I'm going to try to change this gadget to another gadget. Thank you very much. I don't know if colleagues from Gauteng legislature have already introduced themselves. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, if we're done, I want to thank everybody for I think in terms of familiarizing ourselves with faces to know that our representation to the committee from the members of the committee and also the representation from provinces. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Then we have adopted the agenda. Now we will then, any apologies from the secretary?
Thank you, Chair.
apologies.
Chairperson, thank you, Chair. We received an apology from the Minister's Office, Chair. The Minister has a prior engagement. The department, I think, will deal with the Deputy Minister's apology. I haven't received anything. And then on behalf of our members, Chair, I haven't received any apologies. Thank you, Chair.
Marshall, then we will then go now to the agenda, which is the fundraising bill, which is a bill for provinces. And then we are very grateful to have the presentation attendance of provinces, which is a 76 bill that we have invited the department to give us a briefing. And then after the briefing, we will have then deliberation from the members. And then we will be also having 3 reports. And then after the reports, we will then have our minutes. And then that will be then for the agenda for this meeting. So without any delay, we will give to the department to go through the bill, to take the committee into confidence in terms of the bill. And then I will have then deliberations from the members of the committee. Can we then have that on the screen? And also the department is welcome. Who's gonna, okay.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the Select Committee. I am Brenda Sibeko from the department. I thought it would be useful to start by indicating to the Select Committee to be, yeah, we are very proud of this. The reason the minister is out of the country is because she has gone to the International Social Security Association's Africa Conference, where she will be receiving several awards for some of the work that the department is doing with regards to social security. She's receiving the overall, the department is the overall winner for the child support grant implementation in the country, and also for the social relief of distress. So she's there to receive those awards, but also participate in some of the other activities in Cote d'Ivoire. Our DG is also accompanying her at that conference, so she is also not here. I've been asked to lead the delegation, which the presentation will be given by our legal eagles. We have 2 legal eagles in this meeting, Advocate Dladla, who heads up our legal services, and Advocate Nchochisa, who will give the actual presentation. We are pleased to be able to present to you the fundraising amendment bill. this piece of legislation that is very, very old. It's from 1978, pre-democracy. And a lot of the provisions in the legislation have become pointless in that it has, there are several sections that have been, what is the correct word? The legal people can say, they have become obsolete, primarily because other legislations have overcome it. We have introduced the Disaster Management Act, which makes various provisions of this legislation to not be appropriate. We've also introduced the NPO Act, which also amends certain parts of this legislation. We've also introduced the Public Finance Management Act, which also makes certain provisions of this legislation to not be sensible anymore. Therefore, we need to amend this legislation and bring it into the democratic era, and also bring it into alignment with the broader disaster management legislation and the Public Finance Management Act. So primarily what we want to do is begin to make sure that the fundraising act that we are hoping to have is going to enable the Department of Social Development to properly clarify its niche in providing support to the country in instances of disasters. It's going to be a legislation that is subservient to the broader macro legislation around disaster, which is the Disaster Management Act of the country. So this one is about identifying social development's role and ensuring that previous funds that were established under the apartheid government are now consolidated in order to make sure that we are able to provide a common support to all victims of disaster in the country. We also want to make sure that it not only responds, but also in some instances is able to mitigate and prevent disasters. So we are also hoping to rename the fund that we will be creating for social development, so that as the department participates in disaster management, it also makes sure that it not only waits for things to happen, but becomes takes a more developmental approach in disaster management in the country. I do not want to say too many things other than to say that the National Assembly approved the bill in September 2022. So we're hoping that once this process is, we have undergone this process of presenting to the provinces, that it will then be approved and will begin to then do the regulations, which will specify more details of exactly how the fund will operate. But the primary thing is to consolidate all of the different funds that are currently dormant in that legislation and ensure that it's able to operate in a coherent way in line with the disaster management framework of the country, but also in line with the Public Finance Management Act. With those few remarks, I would like to hand over to Advocate Mchwachisa, who will take us through the actual content of the presentation and the bill itself. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Advocate, you're welcome.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable members, and good morning to you all. Just to indicate in terms of the contents of this particular presentation, where we'll be looking at the contextual background, which has been briefly given by Mr. Sibeko, the problem statement that we have, which she has also touched on, the current financial status of the funds referred to, the strategic focus of the bill, the purpose of the bill, the Fundraising Act original provisions that we have amended as a department in order to be in line with the current dispensation, and also the proposed provisions in the bill, and also look at the recommendation that we will be presenting to you, Honorable Chair, Honorable members. Just by way of introduction, not to dilute the previous speaker's words, but just to indicate that, as she has already said, this is one of the most medieval pieces of legislation. In the early 70s, the apartheid government established what we call the Fundraising Act of 1978, which is the one that we are amending today, which seeks to provide in fact, which sought to provide relief services to the white minority in the country at the time. So the monies that were accumulated in various funds were dispersed mainly to white communities who were allegedly affected by disasters, acts of terrorism, acts of social violence, and refugees who supported the regime at the time. Furthermore, there was a declaration that was needed in order to confirm a disaster, which also excluded the homelands that existed. And in that way, only a few number of people from the relief services from those particular areas were excluded. So in view of this, following democracy, the Department of Social Development was tasked with the mandate to develop safety nets to cushion the vulnerable communities against the impact of food insecurity and vulnerability due to life exigencies. To this end, one of the severe impact to communities is exposure by vulnerable people to hazards and risks that culminate into disaster due to lack of disaster risk mitigation and developmental programs in the environment that communities reside, as we have seen with the floods in KZN and the Eastern Cape and Northwest in the recent past. Those were highly affected, and the banning of shacks in the Western Cape, all such kind of scenarios that we may think of. So in recognizing the need for uniformity of the approach to disaster, you will recall that the Disaster Management Act was passed in 2002 for the development of a national disaster management framework, which seeks to provide a coherent, transparent, and inclusive policy on disaster risk management appropriate to the community of South Africa. You will also recall, honorable members, that as indicated, one of the challenges with this particular piece of legislation is that it is almost 45 years, if not 46 years old by today, and so much has happened in between. We had the 1997 fundraising, that is NPO Act. We also had in 1999 the PFMA, and in 2002 we also had the Disaster Management Act, and we also had in between the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, which also sought to deal with issues of bills that affect provinces and bills that do not affect provinces. So basically, this amendment seeks to situate this legislation in its rightful context at present. So you will notice that in terms of this piece of legislation, that is the Fundraising Act, which was promulgated in 1978, as we have indicated, which sought to provide for control over collections of contributions from the public. It also had to set up a number of funds. You will also understand, as I've said, some of the issues in terms of this legislation have been overtaken by events because the collection by NGOs, NPOs, and the likes were overtaken by the development and promulgation of the NPO Act in 1997. So some of the functions fell off by the roadside. So the funds that got to be established at the time relates to the Disaster Relief Fund, the State President's Fund, the Relief Fund, the Social Relief Fund, and the South African National Defense Fund. So when you look at the Disaster Relief Fund, it was meant to provide assistance to victims and survivors of disaster. The fund is still active and provides short-term relief to victims of disaster in poor communities. The State President's Fund, which is meant to provide short-term relief to victims and survivors of the acts of terrorism. Since 1994, the fund was activated in 2002 to assist with the burial of one of the victims of a bomb blast in Soweto, if we still remember the story, where 2 children of the deceased survived and then received support until 2010 when they reached the age of majority and later returned to their country of origin, Lesotho. The relief fund, the Refugee Relief Fund, which is meant to provide assistance to refugees, it has remained dormant since the new dispensation, and more especially after the passing of the National the Disaster Management Act. The Social Relief Fund, which is meant to provide funding to organizations providing assistance to victims of violence. This fund was last active in 2001 and has since become dormant. And we also have the South African National Defence Fund, which is meant to provide a short-term relief to members and their dependents who suffer financial hardship arising from the performance of their duties that led to their incapacity. So the fund is active and is located at the National Department of Defense. With that in mind, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, we have noticed that some of these funds are dormant, and sometimes we find that there could have been some duplication between what the National Disaster Management Act seeks to achieve and also the current legislation itself seeks to achieve. Hence, there is a need to amend this piece of legislation in order to understand that at the end of the day, the issues of disaster are dealt with effectively by the relevant department and not the function lying all over. So the Department of Social Development is not, as we all know, the key department in dealing with the issues of disaster as COGTA is seized with such a responsibility. So with regard to the problem that we are facing is that, as we have indicated, that a number of challenges have been experienced in the implementation of this piece of legislation, which I had said is about 45 to 46 years old today. And this was promulgated way before the current dispensation, which has also come up with a number of pieces of legislation, as I have indicated, which have had a direct impact on this piece of legislation. So in order for these pieces of legislation to read well, there has been the amendment of various provisions of this particular piece of legislation. So this act, that is the 1978 Act, has become dysfunctional over the years, with many parts being repealed, as I've just indicated. And only Chapter 2 of the Fundraising Act remains. And some of the funds that have been established in terms of this legislation have become dormant. And presently, relief services as contained in the Fundraising Act are fragmented and costly to administer due to lack of consistency in the application and implementation. And you will also understand that because there are various funds, they need a lot of administration, maybe a number of board members for each fund to function well, and which is costly for the state at the end of the day, taking into account our fiscal challenges. So institutional arrangements as contained in the Fundraising Act are not conducive to respond immediately on issues of emergency. Hence the passing of the 2002 legislation, the Disaster Management Act, which is effectively dealing with such. So in most cases, the Fundraising Act provisions duplicate some of the relief services that are catered for in another piece of legislation which the department currently administers, which is the Social Assistance Act when a disaster occurs. So in order to avoid such duplication, there has been a need to amend this legislation to be in line with all these pieces of legislation that I've made reference to. So the amount of money lie locked in 3 different dormant funds. That is one of the challenges, as I indicated, that these funds are actually dormant, but there is some money that is lying there in terms of this. Again, with regard to the issue of the 4 boards dealing with issues of relief, which have been found to be inappropriate and inefficient in emergency situations. Hence, there is a need for just one fund and one board to deal with such issues in order to avoid the unnecessary duplication and too much administration by different number of functionaries, so that at the end of the day, we can be effective and efficient in dealing with issues of disaster. While the Disaster Management Act of 2002 enjoins government departments to develop and implement disaster risk mitigation projects, thus reducing the impact of disaster when it occurs, the Fundraising Act promotes reactive short-term intervention with no provision for sustainable long-term development. So this is one of the issues that we need to be cognizant of. And we must also be mindful of the fact that the previous portfolio committees, the National Treasury and the Auditor General have raised concerns on the multiple relief funds and their various boards, which impact negatively on the administration and secretariat costs of the department, as I indicated. The strategic goal of the bill is to ensure that it amends the provisions of the Fundraising Act by removing duplication of services, as we have indicated. It also streamlines the responses to disasters and allows for risk mitigation and development strategies. It also seeks to deal with a broad spectrum of socio-economic development issues as determined by the minister from time to time. As indicated earlier, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, that the purpose of this bill that brings us here today is to rationalize the Fundraising Act by consolidating the Disaster Relief Fund, the Refugee Fund, Social Relief Fund, and State President's Fund, which I made reference to earlier, so as to focus on a proactive mitigation strategy for disasters and promote the social development of communities. It also seeks to contribute to the strengthening and streamlining of administrative processes and rationalize the administrative and secretariat costs to the Department of Social Development. Because having so many funds and so many boards, I mean, is costly, as has been indicated. So the newly established Disaster Relief and National Social Development Fund should be empowered to raise funds from public, private sectors, including international donors, to address short-term intervention and also impact on long-term development issues. So the amendment itself will align the Fundraising Act with the provisions of the Disaster Management Act, the PFMA, and other related pieces of legislation, as indicated that there are various pieces of legislation that impact on the provisions or the functioning of the particular piece of legislation, the duplication and all that. So some of these provisions have become obsolete. Some of these provisions have been accommodated in other pieces of legislation that have been introduced in between. If we look at the original provisions itself that have been amended, what were they actually saying? In terms of Section 12, subsection 1 of the Fundraising Act, you will notice that the minister means the Minister of Social Welfare and Pensions, which does not exist anymore because we no longer have that kind of a title in the Ministry of Social Welfare and Pensions. As we indicated, that this is a very old piece of legislation that needs to be brought in line with the current situation. And it also includes the Minister of Defense in as far as that chapter applies in relation to the South African Defence Force Fund, which now is accommodated in the Department of Defense. So the minister would then, in terms of this piece of amendment bill, be the Minister of Social Development. Again, Section 17.3, which also speaks of a number of board members, so about 15 of them. And now we seek to reduce that number, as we will see in the provisions as we move forward with our presentation. And again, in Section 18A, the board of the Disaster Relief Fund shall be, with due regard to the financial position of that fund and the requirements of each case, rendered to persons, organizations, and bodies who suffer damage or loss caused by a disaster. So we also have to amend that piece of provision in order to be in line with how things are at present. With regard to Section 20, subsection 1, a board may, in order to enable it to achieve its goals, collect contributions and may control the collection of contributions by other persons, organizations, and bodies for the said objects. And we have indicated that such a function has also been overtaken by the NPO Act, and in that way there is a challenge with regard to that. Section 20, subsection 1, a board may, in order to enable it to achieve its objects, collect contributions, which is also one of the provisions that we are looking at in terms of the amendment in order to respond to the current situation. Section 20, subsection 2 indicates that a board may exercise such powers and shall perform such functions and as may be conferred or imposed upon by this act, and may exercise such other powers as may be necessary or expedient or incidental for the better achievement of the object of this particular act. So that function needs to be revised in order to sound well in terms of how things should be at present. And Section 25 deals with the administrative work, which includes the receipt and disbursement of money incidental to the performance of the functions or the exercise of powers of a board or any committee of the board. And that also needs to be amended in order to relate to the current scenario, taking into account the existence of various other pieces of legislation. And Section 36, which deals with the making of regulations by the minister. Section 36 provides that the minister may make regulations relating to the form of any application, authority, temporary authority, special authority, permission, a special permission notice, order, or register which is required or may be made, granted, given, issued, or kept under this Act, and any other form required in carrying out the provisions of this Act, which is the Fundraising Act. It also further provides that the minister may make regulations relating to the information which shall be included in any report, return, or statement to be furnished in terms of this Act. And you'll also notice that there has been some new development in terms of other pieces of legislation relating to personal information, which needs to be taken into account. So all those pieces of legislation that have since emerged will have to be harmonized with this current piece of legislation, so that at the end of the day, there is no inconsistency. The issue of the financial year of the fundraising organization or registered branches, any other matter which is required to be or may be prescribed under this Act, and the minister may also regulate any matter which she or he deems necessary or expedient to prescribe in order that the objects of this Act may be achieved. And also the issue of the regulations that are made under subsection 1, that is the form of any application up to E, A to E, may prescribe penalties for a contravention thereof not exceeding a fine of 500 rand or imprisonment not exceeding a period of 6 months. So these are the issues that need to be addressed so that they respond positively with the other pieces of legislation that have since been promulgated, because there is a number of inconsistency with this particular issue. So what this bill actually provides for at present, what does it, how does it respond to these challenges that I've just presented relating to the provisions that need to be amended? If we look at clause 1 of the bill, it seeks to amend the definition of a minister. As we have seen that the minister, in terms of this particular Act, that is the Fundraising Act, is the Minister of Social Welfare and Pensions, which language does not exist anymore. And clause 2 seeks to amend section 17 in order to reduce the number of board members, which is currently 15 in terms of this legislation, to 10, which becomes a very problematic issue when you've got such a large number of board members, if you want speedy and effective results when the disaster occurs. Clause 3 seeks to amend section 18 in order to make provision for the objects of the Disaster Relief and National Social Development Fund, which consolidates the funds that it places in the Transparency Act. As we have noted that we've got plenty of these, so they need to be taken into account at the end of the day. Clause 4 of the bill seeks to amend section 20 of the Principal Act in order to empower the minister to give directions to a board in respect of disbursement of funds and to ensure that a board acts in accordance with ethical principles as contemplated in the PFMA. So this is one of the areas where we align this piece of legislation with the PFMA, which did not exist at the time of its promulgation. That is between 1978 and 1999, which has been a very long period without the provisions of the PFMA. Same as clause 5, which seeks to amend section 22 of the Principal Act, that is being the Fundraising Act, mainly to provide for the financial management and control of the funds. It's the same principle that applies with regard to clause 4, because there is a need to align this with the PFMA. Clause 6 seeks to substitute Section 25 of the Principal Act. The proposed substitution seeks to further provide for the administrative work of the boards and for disbursement of funds managed by the boards, so that there is a clear line of march when it comes to how disbursement has to take place when the disaster occurs. Again, clause 7 seeks to insert Section 25 capital A in the Principal Act in order to provide for the discontinuation and transfer of certain funds. As we have indicated earlier, that we've got 4 funds that existed, and now the following funds established under Section 16 of the Principal Act will cease to exist in terms of this bill. That is the Refugee Relief Fund, the State Residence Fund, and the Social Relief Fund. And the Disaster Relief Fund established under 16A of the Principal Act will continue to exist under the name of Disaster Relief and National Social Development Fund. So you will see that is the purpose for this particular provision. And all the amounts in terms of the funds that will cease to exist, that is the funds referred to in paragraph A, immediately before the effective date to vest in the Disaster Relief and National Social Development Fund. And any board established by the minister in terms of Section 17 and responsible for managing a fund referred to in paragraph A is dissolved. And subject to paragraph C, all liabilities, assets, and rights existing as well as accruing of the funds referred to in paragraph A must devolve upon the Department of Social Development. So basically that will be the process that will be followed in terms of dissolving those funds, so that at the end of the day, we are clear as to what will happen to the funds that will be dissolved, and for them, in order for them to not operate anymore. Clause 8 of the bill seeks to amend Section 36 of the Principal Act in order to provide for the making of regulations, because there are some areas which may not have been regulated, or some areas which do not necessarily need to be regulated. So Section 86 will be amended by Clause 8 in order to give effect to that. And we also have to amend the citation of this piece of legislation because the bill provides for the short title of this. With that in mind, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, we must take note of this particular bill as to the challenges that exist with regards to the relief fund. The relief fund, we must take note in terms of such challenges and what the issues that we seek to address, and how this particular bill will assist in giving effect to the disasters that may visit us from time to time. And we must also take note of the pieces of legislation that have overtaken the Fundraising Act, which have necessitated this amendment. And we are mindful of the fact that, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, this bill was tagged as a Section 76 bill, that is a bill affecting provinces. But we must also be mindful of the fact that the reading of the bill itself does not necessarily have any functions for the MECs, the HODs, and all that. Mainly the role player in this particular piece of legislation as it stands today is the Minister of Social Development, but we have taken note of its classification as a Section 76 bill, hence our presentation to this committee today. On that note, Honorable Chair and honorable members, we recommend to the Select Committee on Health and Social Services to take note of the proposed amendments and commence the processing of the fundraising amendment bill. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and honorable members.
Thank you very much, Advocate. Advocate, can you please just pronounce your surname again? I don't want to pronounce it wrong.
Mchochisa, Honorable Chair, but you can just say Luyanda. You can just say Luyanda, it's very easy.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Advocate Mchochisa. Advocate, thank you very much. That is a very brief presentation in terms of the amendment of the fundraising bill, which is dealing with provinces. And now we will open for engagement to the members of the committee. Just in terms of my takes, that I think the focus will be, okay, Honorable Luthuli. Okay, I got the hands. I will come to the hands now. And then I think our focus will be on the purpose of the bill, so that we in terms of what the bill is, in terms of the presentation, we will have the hands. We have Honorable Luthuli, Honorable Christians. We have two hands. Michelle, you will also assist me if there are any other hands. Honorable Ndongeni. Honorable Ndongeni, we have three hands now. Can we say for the first round, we go with the three hands, Honorable Luthuli, Honorable Christians, and Honorable Ndongeni. In that sequence, Honorable Luthuli.
Thank you, Chairperson, and greetings to everyone. Chairperson, I would like to ask the department a few questions. We've seen that in their presentation, they are telling us that the board used to be 15 and now they want to reduce it to 10. My question is, what is the rationale behind the reduction of the maximum number of board members from 15 to 10? And also, how much money is locked in these three different dominant funds, of which are they gave in the presentation? The last one, what process will the department adopt to recruit and appoint board members, and how will the board members be remunerated? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Luthuli. Honorable Christians.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. My questions were also around the funding. So there are 3 or 4 dormant funds. How much is in these funds? Were these funds gaining any interest while they were laying dormant? Also, how is DSD planning to mitigate disasters in the future? Are they planning to work with other departments? Additionally, these board members that are going to be appointed, will they be directly appointed to speak to or advised by the minister? And if so, would it be DSD that regulates the board to administer the funds, how they administer the funds, etc.? And then to what is the plan going forward for strategic partners to come on board and to commit to future resources to add to this fund? And then just lastly, what will be done differently if this amount of money is pulled into one fund, what will be done differently to see to it that during disasters, that funds can be made available to everybody more speedily, more effectively? And how will the board and the department ensure that fraud is mitigated in the future with these funds? Because I see they are quite substantial. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Christians. Honorable Ndongeni.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Chair, morning departments, morning officials. My question is on the report of the ad hoc committee on flood disaster relief and recovery points out that there are challenges in coordinating role players in the disaster management space in all three spheres of the government. My question is, how will the department ensure better coordination of all role players in the disaster management? The second one is, one of the mandate of the fundraising amendment bill is to raise funds related to disaster, which is commendable. However, fundraising seems to be a difficult exercise for some entities in the country. For example, the committee recently had a meeting with the National Development Agents, wherein it was reported that there is a lack of enthusiasm from strategy partners to commit financial resources. My question is, given the lack of enthusiasm from strategic partners to commit resources, how is the department planning to encourage strategic partners to commit their financial resources? The last one, Chair. The bill provides each fund to be subjected to direction of ministers. Does this mean that the minister will direct the board? If so, how would department regulate the board to administer funds? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Luthuli, Honorable Christians, Honorable Ndongeni. In the absence of any further hands, if there are any further hands, I can still invite if there are any further hands. But if not, let's then give a response from the department.
Good morning, Chairperson.
Good morning.
Chairperson, I'm
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. I'm Beverly Badenhorst from the Gauteng Legislature. I
Yes,
would
thank
also
you.
like to pose a question.
Yes, you welcome the provinces. It's appreciated. Provinces also to give their experience. Honorable Badenhorst.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, my question is, why was this funds locked up from 1978? And how much money has been stored up for 43 years with all those disasters that are happening that happened in the past? Was this not a crime against humanity to keep all those monies for such a long time and not making use of it when all this disaster struck by then? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Badenhorst. Can we invite any other provinces? If there are any other provinces, provinces are welcome also to make inputs. Okay. All right. In the absence of any further questions, clarities, we will then give to the department for response.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We'll tackle some of the questions together. I'll start with a few and hopefully allow our legal eagles to help with some of them. To start with the very last one, let me just indicate the funds have not been dormant for the whole period. In the presentation, advocate would have indicated when some of them were last active. So I think there's one that was active up to 2002. Part of the reason that they have been dormant is primarily because each of them, in terms of the current legislation, were required to have a board. And given the fact that their functioning is restricted to responding to nationally declared disasters, there weren't sufficient disasters that are happening at the national level to warrant having a board that needs to be paid for meetings and so on, when they would be very inactive over the period. So we thought that it's rather expensive because each of the different funds needed to have a board that makes decisions around how they spend money. So you would have had people who are members of a board who come to your meetings, but actually don't have activity in the sense that they are supposed to respond to nationally declared disasters, and there are not a lot of those. So as a result, there was only one fund that was left to be active, and that's the disaster relief fund. So that's primarily the reason why they were dormant for a long time. In terms of the amount of money that is there, that is remaining there, they have, some of them have very small amounts of money. For example, the Refugee Relief Fund has less than R1 million in it. It's 635,000 in that fund. And then there's another one, the Social Relief Fund, which has 44 million. And then the State President Fund has 46 million. But the fund that has been active had quite a bit of money, and it was used, some of that money was used now during COVID. And as a result of that, it now has 31 million left. So in total, the amount of money that would be available in these funds is 124 million if they were all consolidated. It's still not a lot of money. And I do have to indicate in response to one of the questions that was asked, I think by Honorable Christians, to say that yes, all of the funds are earning interest even though they are dormant, and even the active fund is also earning interest. But there has been no fundraising that has been happening over the period, and that's one of the things that we want to elevate currently in order to ensure that they start to raise funds. To go back then to some of the questions in a more systematic way, the motivation for reducing the number of board members is also about cost and about the amount of work that needs to be done. We thought that 15 board members is quite excessive. That is a lot of people that need to be in the board. The view that we had a conversation about also with the portfolio committee was that it makes sense to rather have 10. So remember that 5 of them would be civil servants and 5 would be people from outside of government. And those have to be paid in terms of the Public Finance Management Act. The National Treasury determines the rates of payment for board members, and those are the rates that will be used for these members also. Then the process by which the department will use to appoint members, basically the Disaster Relief Fund has been active, and we are currently in the process actually of appointing board members because the term of the previous one expired. The way that happens, which is not going to change in terms of this legislation, except for the number of board members, is that the minister advertises for the membership, and the people who come are nominated. And in terms of those nominations, what the department has tried to do is ensure that we have a mix of skills. One of which, because of the importance of beginning to raise funds, is to have members who have fundraising abilities or have access to have a lot of connectedness with potential strategic partners. But also we have tried to ensure that we include people who have financial management skills, auditing skills, strategic planning skills, and also people who know quite a lot about disaster management and disaster mitigation. And we've been very fortunate in that the people that we've been able to, that we are proposing, they have not been appointed yet, but that are being proposed are in fact people with a mix of those skills. So that is a process that is underway. But the primary thing is to say that it's the Minister of Social Development who will then make the appointments. However, in terms of their operations and so on, they have to operate in line with the Public Finance Management Act in terms of accounting for all the money that they are using and how they are using it. How the minister will direct the board, she will not direct the board like verbally, but we are proposing that there should be regulations that create the parameters and clarify the authority that the minister may have, so that it's not whatever minister, whichever minister it is may feel like, but that there are regulations that are in place that are approved that indicate the space within which the content of what the minister may or may not direct the disaster relief fund on. So after the legislation is approved, we then have have to create those regulations, then which the minister would have to sign off. Of course, the provisions around payments and so on, financial implications, have also to be concurred with by the Minister of Finance. It's the primary thing that we think will be different in how this fund operates, the disaster relief fund. We are calling it the Social Development Fund. We are adding the social development element to it, in that it should not just be a reactive fund, but also look at things like how to avoid certain disasters. There are disasters that we know happen every year. For example, we know in certain places there's going to be fires when it's winter, there's going to be floods when it's, so some of those things that are predictable. We wanted the board to be empowered to begin to look at mechanisms of helping those communities, obviously depending on how much money they're able to raise, but to begin to empower those communities to be more resilient and to find ways of preempting and preventing some disasters from occurring. So that function is not available to the fund at the moment, but it's something that we are hoping that once this fund is called the Social Development Fund, in addition to disaster relief, it can also get into that space. Of course, relying on the expertise of some of the board members who have a lot of them have actually been have many years of experience in disaster management and disaster risk mitigation. The issues of fraud, the requirement for the board members, of course, is the normal provisions of fit and proper, how they are appointed. They need to be fit and proper. They mustn't be sequestered. Those provisions are in place in terms of the criteria that's used to appoint them. But also they have to report. The fund is reported under the PFMA. It's also audited by the AG of the country. So any kind of fraud that happens, they would actually get caught. But the primary thing is the requirement for all of the members as they do their procurement and so on. They are required in terms of their board. They have to do a board charter which specifies the procurement issues and their operational mechanisms and so on. And all of those things will be scrutinized, of course, by the department to make sure that it's in line with proper governance and proper procurement, and also adheres to the PFMA. On the fundraising one, that's going to be a challenge, of course, but we believe that the people that are being proposed have quite a lot of skill in that area. We specifically looked for people who have fundraising abilities and who some of them work in private companies that have been sponsoring different things in government, companies that have an interest in social development and in risk mitigation expertise and so on. So this one is something that will be a focus of this new board, because the previous one wasn't having such a focus at all. But we hope that because we will have the expertise of those people who are on the board, and they will be directed in terms of the provisions, they will be empowered to do so, to go and look for funds and account for them in terms of this. One of the things that we've experienced in the department, especially now during the floods, was that there were a lot of different companies and sponsors who wanted to offer some support to the department, but we didn't have a good coordinating mechanism for it. And so money was flowing in different ways, and we didn't have a proper mechanism through which we can account and manage and direct those funds. So we think that having an ongoing fundraising approach, which is not dependent on responding immediately to a crisis, is a more sound approach to dealing with funding for disaster. And if there's a board that is primarily empowered to do so, they will have a proper coordinating mechanism and be able, therefore, to have funds already in hand by the time that disasters happen, by encouraging potential funders and sponsors to provide money as and when during the year, rather than waiting for a particular moment when there is a disaster happening. Also, it provides a good platform. Sometimes it's difficult for potential sponsors to figure out how to support. So this creates also a platform. They must market themselves to be a platform through which different stakeholders may be able to assist government in terms of dealing with disasters. I don't know if colleagues want to add. There might be one or two things that I have missed. It seems not, Chairperson. I don't know if there's any question that I did not deal with.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much to the department, and I believe that all questions have been covered. If there's nothing more from the department in terms of responses, we'll give them a second round. If there are any members that want to have any further questions, or any other member who did not yet engage, we'll then open that, and even to provinces for any further questions. Yes, while we are waiting for any further hands, just from my side, for us to have a summary in terms of the input, is that our focus in terms of the bill is to streamline, and also to be the bill to be proactive, and also to align the funding, and also to, in terms of the Fundraising Act organization, is to establish a board in terms of numbers, and also to enable the board to achieve and collect contributions, and also the powers of the board, and then also the administrative disbursement. Yes, and then also what I've looked at was also the clause of the act, which was outlined in terms of the summary of the amendment of the bill, which is the definition of the minister and the reduce of the board members, provision for the objectives, financial management, disbursement, administrative, and the regulations, which is section 36. So those are the key points that I have taken from the point of the chair, so that when we move forward, that we just have a clear in terms of how we're going to move on. We will give the outline going forward, but I will still give opportunity to the members for any further engagements from all the members of the committee, from the provinces. If we don't have any further, let me then give the outline in terms of how this bill will be unfolding. The bill will have a 6-week cycle, which today we are on the first week of the cycle, and then delegates from provinces will be briefing their provinces on this bill on the second week, and then public hearings will take place in provinces, and then delegates will then bring negotiating mandates. Yeah, I think that is in terms of how the process will be unfolding, so that when we move forward, that we know from this point, how are we going to move forward with this bill? Are there any questions? Are there any questions in terms of the upset of any questions? Can we get a proposal in terms of the inputs, in terms of the process of the bill? That is how we're gonna go forward with this bill. Any proposal from the members of the committee? We have received the presentation of the content of the bill, and also we understand it's an aging bill, and how this bill is in terms of proposals, in terms of amendments, and how the process will be unfolding going forward. Can we have any proposal for moving forward with this with the bill in terms of the process? I don't know, there's a hand up. I cannot identify whose hand this is. Yeah, the member can speak. Whose hand is up?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. I think you have outlined as to how are we going to deal with the bill from now onwards. Therefore, we must welcome the presentation. It was informative and progressive, and would like to accept it and adopt it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nkosi. Now identify your device. Honorable Nkosi, the whip of the committee is proposing for the adoption. Any seconder? Can we have any seconder?
Ndongeni seconds, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ndongeni. Then members, thank you very much. That is how we're going to move forward with this bill. And thank you very much once to the department once more for a very detailed presentation, was very clear. And as a committee, that's how we're going to move forward in terms of the amendment of this bill. Thank you very much on that point. Then we will then go to the agenda, back to the agenda again. On the agenda, we had reports. Can we have the reports as which one is first? Which first report? Can we, if possible, to flag the first report so that we move with those report one by one? Okay. Can we move it a little bit down? You see all right. This is the report, the draft minutes of the visual meeting of the Select Committee on Health and Social Development, which on the date was the 9th of May, 2023. Time was 9 o'clock. Venue, it was a Zoom meeting. The agenda was a briefing by the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, 2023-2024 annual performance plan and budget, consideration and adoption of the committee minutes. If there are not any questions for clarity on this report of the committee, and can we then, okay, I see a hand. Civic, if I'm pronouncing it correct.
Speak, Brent.
Yes, you may
Chair,
speak.
I wanted to check from the department side whether we still need to be in the meeting.
No, thank you very much, Advocate. My apology. You are excused. And thank you very, very much for the department. We greatly appreciate. Thank you very much. Honorable Nkosi?
Thanks very much, Chair.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Actually, I was coming to request you that let us release the department so that we can continue with our internal business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Whip. So the department is excused. Okay, can we have then any clarities or any corrections, clarities? If not, can we have a proposal for the adoption? Any proposal for the adoption?
Chair,
Honorable Ndongeni.
I propose the adoption of the minutes.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ndongeni. Any seconder?
Lihi, a second.
Thank you, Honorable Lihi, for the seconding. And then these minutes are adopted. Can we go to the next? Okay. This is a policy assessment and recommendations report of the Select Committee on Health and Social Services on the annual performance plan and budget of the Department of Social Development, vote 19, date 16, May 2025. Any corrections? If no corrections, can we get a proposal for the adoption?
Honorable Chair, it's Nkosi. I move for the adoption of the minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Nkosi. Any seconder? Any seconder?
Yes, second.
Honorable Lee, thank you very much. Can we get the next? All right, this one is the policy assessment and recommendations report of the Select Committee on Health and Social Services on budget vote 18. Health and performance plan of the Department of Health dated 16 May 2023. If there are no corrections, any proposal for adoption? Any proposal for adoption?
Ndongeni propose the adoption of the report, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ndongeni. Any seconder?
Nkosi seconds, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nkosi. Yeah, I think those was the if there's any, I don't, yeah, that's the last one, I think. Policy assessment and recommendations report of the Select Committee on Health and Social Services on the annual performance plan and budget of Statistics South Africa. Vote 14 dated 16 May 2023. Any proposal for adoption? Any proposal for adoption?
Ndongeni propose for the adoption of
Thank
the
you very
report.
much. Thank you very much, Honorable Ndongeni. Any seconder?
Nkosi seconds, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nkosi. Yes, I think that was the last report. Under any other matters, I don't think there are any other matters. Can then we ask the committee secretary, Michelle, just to give us the way forward from this meeting, how we're gonna move forward as a committee?
Again, good morning, Chairperson and honorable members, colleagues. Excuse me, Chair. Chair, we've had our briefing on the fundraising amendment bill this morning. I have been in communication with the provincial liaison officers. I have sent to various members briefing dates for our members to brief their legislatures. You, Chairperson, are briefing your legislature tomorrow, and so forth in the next week. Members, I have indicated via email and WhatsApp to certain members where I have been given dates to have briefings in the legislatures. The department chairperson will accompany members to do the briefing in the provinces. And then the 2 weeks after that, Chair, that is when members will have their public hearings in the various legislatures. And we will reconvene by the 13th of June, Chair, where we will do our negotiating mandate meeting. That's for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Michelle. That is how we're gonna move forward, members. And if there are not anything further, let me use this opportunity to thank all the members of the committee and all the support staff, which I believe it was a very fruitful meeting. And on that note, to declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much. Baie dankie.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dongeni.
Nkosi Sihalo.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Baie dankie.